Um, so welcome to Office Hours. I'm Chris Brozdowski. You've probably seen me in relation to, chatting with you about Office Hours prior to this. I have with me Jaron, who's on our engineering team. He is sort of local expert in LabBook deployment, which I'm sure we'll be talking about today. I had a little bit of a chance to review the code you sent, but it was a lot, and I wanted to check in with you. Like, is this your whole pipeline, the snippets that I saw? Is that just your manual tables? Where are you in sort of implementing this? And when you say you need a GUI, like what would that mean for you day to day?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so I think that code developed in-house that GUI by the previous RA in the lab, and I just joined. And so, I mean, mostly when we want a bit more efficient GUI, we felt like that GUI was a little bit tedious in the sense like you have to really manually click through all the tables, and we didn't feel like there was enough for like a specific workflow. And so that's when I joined the lab recently, this past couple months ago. We started looking into other GUI options. And so that code is basically the GUI part isn't as important, more so it's the tables. And those tables I would say we're probably like pretty confident in. We're still modifying as we go, but like we like the attributes, we like the data types, and the different tables that we have. And so I think we have to add a couple more tables, but in that sense, I think we're mostly looking at like manual tables that for input, and those tables, like the ones we listed, are pretty much what we want. And then for as GUIs go, we our lab also works closely with the Costa lab at Columbia, which I know also uses data joint. And they have a GUI that we felt like was very efficient, and we felt like we wanted to try to get a hold of, but we also wanted to talk to you guys because I'm gonna be here for 2 years, but then move on, and we wanted some sort of like kind of cohesive process to work with you guys. And so yeah, we want to find out a little bit more about LabBook. I have a couple specific questions, but I can ask those later, or you can tell me a little bit more, and then we can go from there, whichever works best for you guys.
I say fire away. What are your questions? Have you had a
Okay.
chance to? It would help me to understand sort of how much you've tried to do on your end already. Your familiarity with Docker, perhaps, because that'll be sort of instrumental in getting that deployed.
Yeah, I mean, so I think NYU has pretty strict VPN regulations and rules. So I wasn't able to link our database to LabBook. I tried a couple times and it didn't work. Even at home, it wasn't working. So I think I have to talk to the IT people and figure out how to get around that. But I also tried. I think I have Docker. I downloaded Docker, but I mean, again, I couldn't really get it much use with LabBook. And so that's like kind of my first question, was just for like me and like the other members of the lab. Do you guys have like a demo? I saw the little GIF online of your guys' LabBook GUI, kind of how it works, but do you guys have like a demo of like a more like kind of detailed like entry and adding inserts or like filtering the data of the LabBook that we could see? That's possible.
I mean, one way to demo it is to use our online deployment and link it to the tutorial database we have
Okay.
set up. So if you make an account with us, you can set up some credentials for yourself. And then in Codebook, what you're really doing is interacting with tutorial-db at datajoint.io. So putting that in our online version will get you access to the tables that you would declare via Codebook, which is the Python Jupyter Notebook kind of environment for you.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll give that a try. I didn't even think that. I have an account, so I think that should be pretty simple once I log on.
Sure.
Yeah, and now I think it's a little bit more specific questions about the LabBook GUI itself. And so one thing that's really important was, and my PI really wants, is can you do like single mouse queries, meaning we work a lot with mice. And so say a single subject query, meaning like I did 2 different surgeries and 2 different scans on this mice. If I searched said mice, can you see exactly what was done to the mice, all four different things, surgeries and scans.
It would depend on the way your database is set up. So you can't really go across tables and see them in the same spot. You can only view like a single table at a time, and then do your create, update, delete, that sort of thing, filter thing to those, to specific tables. So that's one limitation currently. That you can really only interact with tables. You couldn't do like a union of two tables and then interact with that as one unit.
Okay.
In LabBook, we have another solution that's purely for visualization that you can do those sorts of things with, and a lot more stuff like render plots and things like that. So purely for visualization, we use a different program that we could talk about in the future. But for LabBook only, you can really only just view the table itself. You can't view any sort of union of multiple tables.
Okay. And so this visualization, is it kind of automatically linked? Like say it's like two different programs. Like say we would use LabBook for entering the data, querying different single table queries, basically like what I did in my surgery table. But then this lab visualization, say it's just another link or something like that, and then I can look across tables and unions and intersections.
Right. So the way it works is LabBook is essentially a website that's packaged with our generic backend. And then the generic backend makes requests to the database on your behalf with your credentials. The visualization application that I was talking about is set up in the same way. It's called SciViz. It's also an open source project. And basically, it's a front end that you define. So it's completely custom. You define what tables, what queries the tables are formulated from. And then it creates a website and it's connected to that same generic backend. So you could theoretically use the same generic backend and then connect both websites to it, and then deploy the websites at like, labbook.datajoint.io or sciviz.datajoint.io under their own subdomains, and access them basically the same way. So
that sounds good. And that visualization has this capability of of all these different parameters of a single subject.
Right. You custom define whatever query you want it to show. And then there's a bunch of different tools for sort of manipulating the restrictions on that query and changing kind of what you see. And then also it comes with Plotly integration. So if, as a result of some of your experiments, you end up with plots, then you basically can visualize those there alongside the tables. Those are the two main features of the visualization thing, but it's more of a curated visualization, right? You have to pre-write the queries, and you can use the tools to restrict the queries down further in the GUI. But like if you union two tables together, you can only see those two tables and restrict those two tables. So it's a little bit, it's still curated, right? You're still curating the queries beforehand.
What's the URL for the public deployment of SciViz via IDL?
It's going to be data-sciviz.internationalbrainlab.org. You might have to switch the data and the SciViz around. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this is I think you have to share it to the Zoom meeting.
Sure. I'll share my screen.
That helps. And then so one thing we were also talking about, and I think Chris mentioned this in one of his emails, just kind of personal workflows. So our lab tech does a bunch of injections, and each of these viral injections would have different parameters. Are we able to set up like personalized workflows where I can just like basically click through each table? Say I run 10 experiments 30 times for a cohort of mice. Are we able to like say set up a workflow where it would automatically give me what tables I have to fill out and maybe even some default values filled in here and there, just so it's a little bit more efficient data entry process?
I'd have to defer to Chris on that.
So I noticed in the code you sent that you had separate declarations of the default values that were that came before, were separated from the table definitions themselves. I didn't see too many of those tables including the default values in the table definitions in like data joint definition syntax. So you could maybe make your own life easier, depending on how you interact with these tables by declaring the defaults there instead of separately. But maybe the motivation the first time around was for auto population in the GUI, and then it didn't make sense to do it twice.
Yeah, exactly. And so for the workflows, do you think that would be possible using LabBook?
Sorry, could you rephrase the question? I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, so like, I guess in terms of basically like how the tables would come up, because right now, say one of the biggest issues we have with our GUI is you declare subject, and then say we do 2 different surgeries to it, you have to click through each different surgery and enter the data. We kind of want something where it's like a little bit more cohesive in the workflow. It's where it's say like, I know I'm doing experiment A, which requires these 2 surgeries. And if I were to select a workflow for experiment A, these 2 surgeries would just automatically pop up. Would that be possible? Something like that, where it's just like a workflow for a specific experiment that we're doing?
Oh, yeah. So the workflow just meant something different to me before.
Okay.
You could certainly write a Python script that anticipated certain circumstances. But then you're more in a position of having to call that Python script when you're doing this set of surgery. I'm not sure how that would interact with LabBook. I don't think LabBook's currently set up to
allow multiple inserts at a single time. Not really. We've designed that functionality like in theory. We haven't developed it because other people have had similar requests where they want to set up sort of a custom multi-insert where it would, maybe insert into the subject. And then if you have like a table that's connected to it for surgeries, and if you do 2 surgeries at a time, you could input 2 entries into there and 1 entry into the subject. That's kind of something we've thought about and we've encountered before, but it's not currently.
Yeah, I guess that kind of is like my second question is, so I think I mentioned this, we work with like a lab at Columbia, the Costa Lab, who uses data joint, and they designed their own GUI. And one part about their GUI that we found really helpful, and a lot of our lab members really were enthusiastic about, is this idea that, I don't know if this is what you were talking about, Jaron, but the fact that, say, like, you can click numerous subtables under a bigger schema. So say, for instance, you have a surgery heading, and then within your surgery, you have like a injection, implant, and head bar. Those 3 different types of surgeries. And one thing about the Columbia GUI, which is nice, is that you were able to basically select all 3 into that surgery tab, and then it just showed up on on one page where you can just like enter in all of the data on one page. Is that something that's possible with LabBook currently, / could that be developed, / is that what you were talking about just now?
Yeah, so not currently possible. Something that we have spoken with other clients that they've been interested in, and that we have thought a lot about already, that we could develop the functionality into LabBook to sort of allow these custom insert views where you would say like, okay, we routinely do this surgery and we need to basically input all this information in one line, and then it would just split it up. It would split the form up and send it to the required tables, basically.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's certainly been the case in the past that folks have reached out to us to develop a contract that had some specific requirements of multi-table insertion for LabBook, and that's really included in scope. And it sounds like we already have the plan, but we just don't have the client that has this listed right now.
Okay, so like, say we were to deem that necessary for a lab and we reached out and contracted you, how would that process look like? And we were obviously like hire you as contractors and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the process.
Okay.
Jason Kirkpatrick is our COO. He would handle the discussion and putting together the contract.
Okay. But it's possible to, it's been done, and it's possible to say, like, we have like specific asks or needs. We could hypothetically contract you guys to make these tests and modify the GUI to work that way. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. And it would come, basically, you would request some feature for LabBook. We would write up a statement of work, basically, of what we will do. And then we would make the update to the open source project LabBook and release a version to it that you can use. And maybe even part of the contract could help your organization deploy it on your resources or whatever. But yeah, you would do that, and then Jason would negotiate all the different contract stuff, and then we would produce it. And within all of that would be the description of how many hours it would take, and what features are actually going to be produced, and that sort of thing. So yeah,
okay,
we've done that with plenty of other labs.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think that's something we wanted to explore too. Just because, I mean, our lab, we don't have that many coders in it, so it'd be nice to, and also have this just relationship where it's a long-lasting relationship, where it's just individuals working on it. I guess my last really specific question is batched entries. Is that possible with LabBook? And like batched entries meaning entering 9 different subjects with very similar parameters. I think I saw something about like an autofill or like copy over feature on like the online documentation. I think I assumed that was basically what batch entries was. Am I correct to assume that?
No, not really.
Okay.
But the same sort of feature that we have been, exploring but haven't developed, where you would do like cross table entries. Another sort of portion of that would be like, let's say I want to put in 10 subjects at a time. That would also be in the same feature set, basically.
Okay.
We just haven't had the contract need to develop it yet, but it's definitely something that has been discussed and, theorized before and worked on a bit. So.
Okay, that sounds great.
Saying that is, given one, it's not far to get to the other.
Right. Yeah. It's essentially the same thing. Right.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's pretty much most of my questions specifically. I think we wanted to just get a better sense what like LabBook looks like / works. I guess I read some online stuff about other labs using it, and so do most labs use LabBook, or do they develop their own GUIs, or like what have you guys' experiences been with that?
There have been folks in the past who developed their own GUIs and then shifted to LabBook. There are some folks who are getting projects started now that expect to use LabBook. I've seen other labs work in more of a Python environment where you're building a dictionary, and that dictionary is your batch of 10 subjects, 10 queries, whatever it is, that you then insert with a command rather than a GUI.
Okay, so a variety, I guess. Yeah, I mean, this answered a lot of my questions, so this has been great. I think I'm pretty much good. And I guess the table entries is just pretty basic, right? We just link our tables to database, to data joint, upload our tables to our database on data joint, and then it should automatically link to LabBook when we log in through our data joint and database URL, right?
Right. So basically, LabBook just connects to a database using data joint. So if you use data joint to connect to create the database, then there should be no issues with doing all the different, database operations of create, update, delete, read.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I think that answers my questions. I guess, Chris, you had some time to look at like the data tables we had. Do you think going forward, say we were to use LabBook, is there any way we should optimize them that would make the transition easier?
Oh, I mean, what I saw were only manual tables, and there wasn't a whole lot of like foreign key reference going on. So it's like it would be pretty straightforward to interact with LabBook. Just select the table, do the entry, select the next table, do the entry. It wasn't clear to me whether or not this was a subset of the tables you actually had, that there were other imported, computed lookup tables somewhere else downstream of these manual tables, perhaps.
I think, to my understanding, again, I didn't play much of a role in developing that code and optimizing those tables, but I think those are pretty much all the tables, because I mean, this lab is relatively new, so I don't think we have much experience. And like the guy who developed it, he was also just like an RA like me who had just recently graduated, so he like kind of was learning along the way. So I don't think we have much of those important lookup tables or anything like that. And so if we were to just have, say, manual tables, and I guess that's a little tedious, but I mean, if it's where we are, it's where we are. Like that would be fine though, right? We wouldn't have to optimize anything further.
No, my only thought was that you're not getting the full use of all of data joins features.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think we're trying to work to that. We want to first, I think the vision kind of is, because we also were just like, we're still kind of learning about data join. And when we were talking to Columbia, they were talking about,
Oh, we lost you for a sec there. Can other folks in the room
notebook for now?
Oh, okay. Coming back.
Oh, sorry. Did you guys freeze?
We lost you for a sec, but
shoot, my bad.
No, it's okay.
Okay, perfect. I think what I was saying, just quickly, I think we should finish because the other people, but just basically kind of use data joint for now as like a data entry site, and then try to optimize it further for the streamliner analysis. And so that's kind of our vision right now. You guys see any glaring issues with that, or recommend we go about it a different way?
No issues that I saw. Intuitively, there might be some different table designs if you knew what was going to be downstream already.
Okay.
But given that you don't, and you are where you are, sure. I guess my impression of the schema when I spent 10 minutes to look at it was that it's pretty flat. I mentioned before, like some foreign key references can help keep your data structured in maybe a way that would be more useful, more sort of intuitive in terms of mouse to number of surgeries. Getting full use in there.
I mean, okay. That also helps a lot. Yeah, I think, that's pretty much all my questions. This was great. And I think hopefully I'll be in touch soon. I have to talk to my PI, and then hopefully we'll figure out what kind of direction we want to go, and I'll be in touch further with you, or even Jason, or Jason, I think was the name you mentioned, other people. And well, thank you guys so much.
No problem.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
I'm going to hop out of the room for a second so that I can come back and screen share preferences. I just have to restart Zoom, but I'll be right back.